welcome everyone to hiring and training for your cloud accounting firm. I'm super delighted to be here with all of you today, and I'm really excited about this amazing group of panelists I get to join for the next hour with you to share some top tips and tricks on how to hire and train for your firm. So we're going to start off with some introductions first, and they're going to share a little bit about who is responsible for their hiring and training at their firm. So get everyone to give a quick intro about who they are, where they're from, and who's responsible for hiring and training. So why don't, Juliette, why don't you start with us?
Perfect. Thank you, Helena. And hello, everyone. My name is Juliette Aurora. I'm the owner of AIS Solutions. We're a virtual firm, but I guess our head office address is Burlington, Ontario. And I'm going to say that the hiring and the training is done by myself and my team leader. It used to be myself and one of the co-owners, and we've kind of transitioned that. So the hiring is primarily done by the two of us in our firm.
Brilliant, thank you. And Shane, would you like to go next?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Shane Duick. I'm glad to be here. I am the national leader for our client accounting and bookkeeping services in the firm, or really for our cloud practice, which we refer to as EASE. In terms of who's in charge of our hiring, it probably depends on where you are hiring. Usually we would have a human capital representative who would be in charge of that, plus likely a manager when it comes to the majority of our team members in the different areas, or myself if it actually comes to hiring more senior team members.
Brilliant. I'll pass it over to Martha.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in. I'm Martha Banner. I am the national leader of cloud accounting services at Grant Thornton. And who's responsible for hiring? Well, of course, like Shane, being part of a larger firm, we have a number of people who are responsible for the hiring process here. Our managers are involved in the process. Our people and culture team is involved in the process. And similar to Shane, if we're looking at hiring some more senior level talent, that's when myself or others in our leadership team get involved in that process. Thank you so much, Helena.
Thank you. And thank you. I'm Helena Patience. I'm the CEO for Entreflow Consulting Group. We're a public practice and HR recruitment firm based in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. It's a little bit earlier for Martha and I today on the West Coast. I have a lovely HR manager who's responsible for our recruitment and hiring and our training. And we also have two other recruiters. And as well, like Martha, we have our managers as well who are responsible for that process. So it's really a collaborative event. So I'm super delighted to be here. Thank you. I'll be your host today. And we're going to go straight into the next question because we've got lots of fabulous content for you today. And the first one is, how do you find your best team members? Walk me through that process. So I'm going to pass it back to Juliette first to begin.
Sure. So hiring has always been a challenge. And I think that everyone in the panel can relate to that, as well as probably everyone in the audience, that finding the right team members is always, probably the reason that you have trouble scaling. And so we used to go the traditional route, you'd place an ad, get a whole bunch of resumes, sit down, sift through the resumes, look at them, and then start arranging interviews. And we found that not only was it really time consuming, but we didn't always come up with the right person. Mm-hmm. And so about 7 years ago, we started automating our process to have the people self-select themselves out of our hiring process. And so typically when we place an ad, we get anywhere from 300 to 400 resumes. And you can't possibly go through all of them. I actually, myself and my team leader, don't actually look at resumes at all. Sometimes we'll look at them at the very end when we're looking to offer the job, but otherwise we're not looking at the resume. I'm a strong believer that it's not really worth the paper that it's written on or emailed on, because there are so many professional resume writers out there as well. So what we've done is we've actually set up a series of steps that people have to go through in our hiring process as soon as they apply for a job. And some of the things are answering a series of questions, doing a video so that we can see how they present, and especially in the virtual world with Zoom being such an important part, the video communication, the video submission is much more important. We have personality tests that we put them through. We have a skills assessment test that we put them through. And once they've kind of gone through, and we make it fun for them. We let them know what it's going to look like, so there's no surprises. And the people that will jump through all of our hoops really want the job. And usually from the 300 or 400 resumes that we've received, we end up with about 20 candidates, which are really strong candidates. And then we narrow it down to, we do a group interview, and then we do one-on-one interviews. So it really does filter them all out. And you get the people that have bought into you, that are engaged, and that really want the job.
That's super cool, super cool. Shane or Martha, do you want to share a little bit about what you do at your firms?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, because really it depends on the role that we're looking for. When we're looking for more junior team members, similar to Juliet, there is a submission process that any candidate would go through. They'd submit their resume to a job posting that is there online. And we have our team members at People and Culture who will go through and vet a number of those resumes. So similar to Juliet, I don't see much until we have a selection of candidates to go through. From there, right now, of course, it's all video interview process. In more normal times, it would be an in-person or just a phone call to start out with. And we'd make sure that they meet a member of our People and Culture team and probably one or two members of our Cloud Accounting Services team. And from there, it's really a discussion with the team members, because like Juliet said, that presentation component is very important, and it's becoming a super important skill that all accountants need to have regardless of position. And so that presentation, the ability to communicate is really part of that vetting process. We also have different attributes that we want to test for. The three that we have evaluations for are be, grow, and think. So who are you today? Do you know who you are and what you want? What are your aspirations for the future? So how do you want to grow? And how do you think about the world that we're in today and where you can have the greatest impact? Those are some of the three top attributes that we're looking for in that initial screening process. From there, you may go on to another interview, depending on how many candidates there are, or an offer will come out your way. Now, of course, when we're looking at someone a bit more senior that we're looking to bring into the organization, it's more of a strategic talent acquisition that we're doing. Those generally come more through reach outs directly by myself or other members of our leadership team. And it's not necessary that there's even a posting for it. We're always on the lookout for superb team members with the right attitude that we know can be a great fit to the organization. And again, in those, it's really a reach out, it's a conversation, it's testing for the fit with how we currently operate or think, and also just how they present themselves and how we believe that they can fit into our existing team structure.
That's great. So more on the headhunting side then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. And it's a good call out too. We're talking about, when you're looking for a specific role, but hiring is something that you're kind of doing all the time, and keeping a potential pipeline is really important, so that when you do need somebody, you don't necessarily have to go through the lengthy process to find people, especially if you know you're growing. It's good to have people queued up for the future. Okay, great. And then Shane, do you want to share a little bit about what you do on your firm?
Yeah, our experience would be very similar, probably just to what Martha described at Grant Thornton, in terms of just how we interact and really cull through a process. We get our human capital team involved really early on, just what are the red flags that we maybe have seen in past experiences that we have, or just in terms of being able to establish the long-term fit within the service line and what that looks like, and with our practice. I think the best thing where we find our best team members, probably one of the things that we would get that from, would be just through other connections that our team members have. They already know our culture, they know our process, they know how we work, and they are very well connected in the communities that they're in. They may have friends that are doing a similar job, or they might be hearing of other people just through connections that they have. And probably some of the best team members that we find are ones that don't come through our hiring funnel. We find some gems in there, but I think that when we have the ability to have somebody who can advocate on our behalf and already do that screening process of this person's really good at what they do, they're a great fit, that they actually just bring them back to us. And I think that for us, that's the biggest piece, where we can trust that there's a fit in culture and everything else right away. And really, it's now just a matter of getting them into our process without the learning who they are, really trying to test the waters early, because we have somebody who's advocated on their behalf that we likely trust.
Perfect. Love it. At Ontraflow, we do a lot of the same things that everyone's mentioned. One thing I might just add is, just before we even start looking, we do a lot of work just to make sure that we're clear about the role. So if we're adding a new role for the first time, or, you know, our firm's growing, expanding, and we have kind of a different need that's popping up, then like we have a RACI structure for all of our teams. RACI is the RACI, so responsible, accountable, contributed, consulted, and informed. Go Google it, RACI, and you'll get all the information. It's super nerdy and I love it. Basically, it highlights all the tasks for a team, and then how each individual within that group is engaged with each of those tasks, because it isn't the case nowadays. We're such a collaborative working environment that one task is just living with one person and nobody else touches it. So we'll often go back and look at that RACI structure. And then from there, we can pull out those specific tasks, and that makes up the bulk of our job description. And then when we convert that into a job ad, then we're super clear about what this job is all about, so that we don't have misunderstandings with candidates about what we're actually looking to do, what we need, and what they can offer. So we find that really helpful. We'll also do a lot of A/B testing as well. So if it's a new role or slightly different role, we'll look at, you know, playing around with the job title, or where we're posting it, or, you know, the blurb about it, and just see if we get different types of responses. Because again, we want to, just like Juliet mentioned, we want to get down to those top talents as quickly as possible, and want to spend as little time fumbling around. Okay, now on to, I want to hear what everyone does from a testing perspective. So I think you all mentioned different types of, you know, personality tests or skills tests or what have you. Can you share, you know, what you're doing, and maybe even the tool or the app that you use as well? I think it's really helpful for people, because there's so many out there, and you can, I don't even know how many we've tested over the years, but it'd be great to hear what's your best practice there. And I think I'm going to pass this one to Shane first.
Yeah, when it comes to testing, just from a base level skills, really for us, there's a few things. There's a couple of interview questions that might be sitting in there in terms of, if depending on the role that we're looking for. When it comes to other things, there's some pieces just around, you know, and we're still testing multiple apps, still trying to find what's the right one that gets the best response. So being able to land on one today, we're still not there. We have different pockets of the firm that are using different things right now as we continue to grow out what this looks like. But we do put a basic skills test forward just to say, can they actually do what they say that they do? And I think that's really Juliet's point of, like, people can write a great resume, you can look great on paper, you can show up great at an interview, but are your skills actually going to match? And I think that's really the base level test that we use to say, can you actually get your foot in the door? I think when we probably start looking further down that path, that test is really ongoing. That's why there is a probationary period in the workforce for what that looks like. That's our piece of being able to see, you know, how do they handle the day-to-day of everything? How do they handle our process? How well do they adapt and grow? If we have somebody who hits their ceiling 2 days after they walk in the door, are they actually going to be here for the long haul and do what we can do out of them? We believe we can train anybody and give them the talent that they need to do it if they have the baseline. But at the same time, you can't do that for everyone, or if it's just going to take too long in terms of what that looks like on how well they pick up things, that's where you may have to actually pull the ripcord, just for the fact that we only have so much time. Your management team only has so much time. And the question always comes to is when you find those best team members or somebody who's really good, would you rather have them spending their time with your stars and growing them versus just trying to get somebody up to a baseline so that they're a functional employee when we have seen a lot of resumes and stuff like that right now? So that's usually the biggest piece that we kind of wrestle with. But for us, a lot of testing is happening in that 90-day window. That's effectively, you know, you're starting to date someone, and now it's time to say, you know, are we in this for the long haul, or are we done? And trying to figure that stuff out by getting to know them. And there's a point of just seeing them in the workforce to test that out.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you cannot figure out until you're actually dating, as it were. Okay, who would like to go next?
No, I'll go next, and I love that analogy that Shane had about the dating someone first, because certainly that's the our experience at Grant Thornton is very similar in some aspects. We do have one skill set test that we do have, And it's for those people who say that they have advanced Excel skills. One of the things that I've noticed is a lot of candidates say they have advanced Excel skills. And part of being in the cloud is that we have an opportunity to really utilize those advanced Excel skills in some pretty unique ways. And when we're looking for certain candidates that need to have those advanced Excel skills, that's something that comes with a lot of time and a lot of training. So that is certainly one of the skill sets that we will test for if we're looking for that specific individual who's going to be primarily responsible in that area. I would say the majority of what we do in the hiring process is more around fit. And that is my biggest indicator for fit is not necessarily how they answer the questions that I ask, but the questions that they ask of me, and how interested they are in what we're doing, in maybe what they've read or what they've seen in the industry. Especially for cloud accounting, we're looking for those individuals that are more forward thinking and are really interested and involved in what cloud is. I know with this group and probably the attendees in the audience, we're one of the early adopters, and now we're getting on to more later adopters in that space. But there's a lot of information that's out there on cloud. And if someone is really showing genuine interest in that and genuine interest in what Grant Thornton is doing in that space, that is such a great indicator for me in terms of fit and interest, and their interest in learning to grow. Because growth to us and to myself is so important when we're looking for that long-term colleague to join our team.
Perfect. The questions that they ask me in the interviews are almost more important than the answers they give me on the questions that I ask them. So I usually like to leave, a good half of the interview, at least at Hathaway Mark, to ask them what questions they have for me. And if they don't have any, there's some problems. Or if their question is, not really inspiring as well, that's a good indicator. And Juliet, please, what do you do for testing? What are the apps you use?
So similar to Martha, it is fit more than it is. We can train skills.
Yeah.
It's the fit that's most important. So we don't actually start testing until probably after phase 3 of our hiring process. And the first couple that we do are around personality. So we use a tool called Predictive Index, which gives us a baseline of, how to interact with them, how they function, how they think, how they, how much instruction do they need? Are they very independent? Because we've been using it for a while, what Predictive Index allows us to do is actually create a profile. So depending upon the role, we have 3 roles in our organization: a junior, a senior, and then a team leader. And so we have a Predictive Index profile. If you're a junior, this is what theoretically your Predictive Index score should look like. They do the assessment, and then we're able to overlay it on top of our profile and see where they fit. So that's a big one for us. And it's served us really well, where there, especially as you go through the interview process, some people are professional interviewers, and they come across really well. They can't necessarily hide in some of these assessments. The other one we use is called the DISC assessment, DISC. That's a big one. And again, if you Google it, there's tons of information on it. And then from a knowledge perspective, we wanted to have a baseline information of what do you know? Do you know debits and credits? And if I take away the software, do you understand what you're doing? And we couldn't find anything, so we built our own, which, as I'm sure most of the people in the panel, you can't find it, you just build it in-house. So we actually have our own bookkeeping assessment test for bookkeeping fundamentals, as well as QuickBooks Online. We're a QuickBooks Online firm. And the tests were so successful that we actually have started selling them as well now. So there are actually a lot of accounting and bookkeeping firms. We built it for business owners to test their bookkeepers if they weren't hiring. But we have a lot of accounting and bookkeeping firms using it as well. And that usually The fit is the most important, the personality standpoint, and then the bookkeeping assessment test also tells us what we need to focus on. So if payroll was a weak point in the assessment, then we know we need to do some payroll training. So it also provides us some guidelines as to where the training would start.
That's great. So you can use that to map out your onboarding, essentially. That's very cool. I like it. We do the DISC assessments as well. And there's certain profiles that are kind of better for accountants. Like you kind of want a high C, high compliance. It's kind of a necessary evil for accountants, and a high S. Entrepreneurs are a high D, high I, generally speaking. So, that makes it interesting for firm owners who are hiring, because you almost have to hire someone who's completely opposite to you, and the natural human instinct is to hire people that you like, that are like you, because we're all ego narcissists at the end of the day. We can't get over that. Oh no, that's recorded in history now that I've just admitted that. And for those of you who are watching today, it'd be great. I forgot to mention, if you have any questions along the way, we are going to do a Q&A at the very end of the session. And so we've got people who are jotting those down for us, and we'll try to get to as many of those at the end. But also, I would love if you can share some of the testing tools that you use as well with your peers, because there are so many out there. There's so many different ways to approach this, and we're really here to support each other, all of us at the conference today. So please share what you're using, what you're doing as well in the chat along the way, because that's really helpful for everybody. One other interesting thing that we did at Ontraflow is we actually asked people to complete the QuickBooks core certification as part of one of the steps in the hiring process, which is basically asking them to spend about 5 to 8 hours on their weekend to do QuickBooks training. So if they've never used QuickBooks before, it's hard for us to know if this is even something they want to be using, if they like the software, and if they can pick it up, and if they can wrap their heads around the fact that we do bookkeeping fundamentally differently in QuickBooks Online than we do in other software, especially desktop software. And if they said, oh, I don't really want to bother spending this time doing the training or the test or the training, then we knew that they weren't going to have the right kind of attitude. And a lot of people came back and said, yeah, that was really great, but I'm really not excited about the software or what have you. Then it's like, okay, well, this isn't going to be a good job for you because you're going to be in it all day long. And we had other people that came back and said, oh my goodness, this software is so cool. I can do so many things. It integrates with all these different apps. And I wish I'd been using this software for years. And you're like, okay, cool. We know they've got the right attitude for our team. So it's an interesting experiment. We don't do it as much now just because it feels a little bit cruel, because it's such a big thing to ask people to do. But especially if we're, unsure, that's a one thing that we do. Okay, next question. What does onboarding, so we've talked a little bit about, the recruitment, the search side, now into the onboarding and training, because you can find the right people. And if you don't get them set up for success, and I'm going to say you, because we are, as the firm owners, are responsible for onboarding. We forget that. People show up and we just throw them a laptop and hope for success, and then wonder why it doesn't work out. We are responsible for that, in my humble opinion. So what do you do for onboarding and ongoing training and development to really set people up for ongoing success? And I'm going to pass this over to Martha first.
My favorite question of the whole session, guys. Hey. Onboarding is such an important part of any hiring process, because it really sets the tone for what your experience is going to be like going forward. So couple things: you show up on your first day and we roll out the purple carpet for you, virtually or in person. You're already immediately signed to a people manager, and you also have a buddy. Your buddy is there to answer any questions you may have around the preparation of files, where the bathrooms are, who are the key people you should be speaking with, and your people manager is there to talk about your growth and help foster your development and do goal setting with you. So those are two of the key people that start with you on day one. There's, of course, Grant Thornton onboarding training, but we also have cloud onboarding training as well. And like Juliet responded with the last question, if it doesn't exist, you build it. We are in the process of continuing to build out the training program at Grant Thornton. I'm sure Many of you watching this today have standard operating procedures or processes that are already defined, and they're probably in paper format and maybe with a few images here and there. Not everybody who's going to join the firm learns best that way. And so part of what we wanted to do was to address the way that people learn. Many people learn by reading, and a lot of people learn by doing. And so we've created a training program with dummy files to help onboard those individuals in a low risk environment. And that's more for the GL platforms like QuickBooks Online. When it comes to the other applications, that's more of the buddy systems, and we're working towards building out full training modules for those third-party applications that we have to go with our standard operating procedures. But really addressing the different ways that people learn, I think is to me, one of the key ways that we can create a really great onboarding experience. And maybe I think this way because I'm a learn by doing person. And so I was really missing that component. Now, Helena mentioned that she asked sometimes for people to do their certifications prior to joining the firm. That does fall in part of our onboarding process. And we actually want them to do that after they've had a bit of experience within the software itself, because the onboarding that we have created is more at the basic level. And so if they can get those basics down, now we know that we can put them into that certification platform. They've got the basic pieces, but they're probably going to learn some really great or more advanced tips and tricks through that piece. And then when we get to the ongoing side, there are so many applications out there, and vendors and people at QuickBooks Online are just so wanting to be helpful and create great experiences for our people as well. And so we work with our vendors to create ongoing experiences for our people, whether that is webinars, whether that's an ongoing touch point, or when there's really big updates to applications. We'll also get our vendors involved and create relationships with them. And it's a great time for our people to interact together and meet with the vendors that we work with on a day-to-day basis. Outside of the technical side of the accounting piece, there's also formal leadership and growth opportunities that are more focused on the soft skills and developing into managers, into senior managers, partners, principals, whatever your career path wants. There are other pathways in the learning side that can be part of the ongoing process for our colleagues.
That's great. I love that there's a focus on the fact that someone might join your firm and doing one type of thing, but that there's opportunity for them to grow and expand and develop their skills and maybe move into different roles or what have you. And it's not come and join us and you're going to be doing this for the next 5 years kind of mentality. Juliette or Shane, do you want to share a little bit about your onboarding programs?
I think I'll jump in. Just ours is very similar to what Grant Thornton would do. I think that probably just some of the things that I'm guessing Martha would do based on her passion for the whole thing and what they've created up is really when we talk about onboarding, one of the pieces that we actually have done is we've looked at when we actually have peak cycles, like with our IT group, when they're really busy, and saying, let's not onboard anybody on those days. So should you onboard somebody on a Friday? Is it a Wednesday? When do we have a low piece? And that's just to make sure that people get their stuff, all of their access to whatever programs they need have been set up appropriately, because when people are rushing to do things, some things just get missed. And we just try to do that, because you always want if after the first day or first week, if somebody asks your employee, how was your first day, first week, you always want it to be a really good experience. You don't want it to be, man, they don't have their stuff together. I got a laptop, couldn't log in, and I had all these other issues. That would be a terrible thing to have. So we try to pick low times just to set ourselves up for a success, which gives them a better experience and gets them engaged. And everything else is very similar around certification, trying to do training along those lines. For us, we really try to limit the exposure that some people have in terms of just, we start out with things that are basic to, again, part of that's testing the waters, but just trying to build on the skill set as they have it and giving them the mantra that I usually use is, if as soon as you are good at something, you likely won't see something like that again. That means it's time to start challenging you and pushing you down the path. to where you want to go. And so we continually do that. But as we do that, part of having someone who is either formally your performance coach at our firm or somebody who's just reviewing your file, or even if it's a buddy, people who will support you along the way. So we don't expect people to be perfect. We're very clear on that. We usually say that, you know what, we'd rather, if a lot of people learn by doing, as Martha had said. So how do we actually give them the appropriate feedback loop that when they've done something, that it's not just, I'm going to type out a massive email of all the things you did wrong in a file. It's actually sitting down, understanding process, really walking through somebody there and talking to them about it. That's a really key piece on how we give people feedback, so we can actually understand. It's better to understand why something was made in terms of a mistake, and then, okay, well, this is what we need to do to correct that. And this is how we apply it to other things that you're going to see, so that they aren't doing that. Because, and most people, even though that sometimes negative feedback is viewed as something that especially from an employer standpoint, or somebody who's a team leader, it can be a bit uncomfortable. The amount of, when you are honest and you give constructive feedback, the amount of people that actually just end up thanking you and that they re-engage into what they're doing and try to continue to grow is so important in how you actually approach that. I think that that's really a big piece as people go on. And then, yeah, those discussions around what do you want your career to be? How do we go and find you the right things that you want to do? And to say we are not a place that wants you to be up or out. If somebody says, this is what I want my day-to-day to look like, and this is what I'm comfortable doing, then we say, that's great. We can find a place for you and our team to be able to do that. And those are the things that we really try to do to make sure that, again, our culture, and that they're happy with what they do and that they have satisfaction. I mean, wages is kind of table stakes in terms of what that looks like, but are people happy what they're doing and what that looks like? They won't grow if they actually aren't engaged in what you're doing as a business. And if you can't get them engaged in that stuff, it's very hard to see them grow. So you have to put them in a spot where they can actually just sink in and start doing things that they like, and they can develop that passion that we have for it, so that they can continue to run down that path of personal growth for them at whatever speed they choose.
Great. Thank you for that. And Juliet, do you want to add as well a little bit about your onboarding, or even the development programs you have there? So once they're kind of onboarded, what does that look like?
Sure. So one of the biggest mistakes I think that we made when we were onboarding and training new team members, and I think everybody has done it, is you hire someone when you're really busy and you have a lot of work, and they come in, you sit them down and you say, okay, I need you to work on this. Oh, you don't know how to do that? Okay, here, let me show you how to do it. They do that, then you give them something else. Oh, you don't know how to do payroll? Okay, here, I'm going to show you how to do this piece in payroll so that they can do the work. And that's the way that we used to do our onboarding and training, where we felt like we were doing a great job because we were telling them what they needed to do and training them before they could do the job. But they always felt overwhelmed. They felt like it was just so disjointed. They never knew from one day to the next whether they were going to be learning something new, whether they were going to be doing something, that they'd done before, and whether they were just overwhelmed. And that was a lot of feedback that we got, because we had a revolving door of new hires for a little while. So what we did was we took a step back and we said, okay, we need to be more systematic about what that training looks like. So we've actually mapped out their first 90 days. And we break it down by module, task, platform, app. And we get them really proficient in one thing before we introduce the next thing. So if in the first piece that we usually start them on is something like accounts payable, and we teach them and train them, usually it's 3 to 4 hours of training, and it's all video based, it's all automated. And then we actually give them client work that's related around what they've learned. And if we don't have client work, then we have dummy files for them to actually practice, so that they're actually able to master something before we introduce the next thing. And we also do it where we get them to master AP manually before we introduce apps that relate to AP. Because as we know, the apps don't always work the way they're supposed to. And if they don't work the way they're supposed to, if they don't understand how it's supposed to work manually, they're never going to be able to find or correct what goes wrong with the apps. So being able to give them a structure, giving them milestones throughout the 90 days, you also get to see, like Shane and Martha indicated, people that are interested in growing and learning will go through the process faster. And that tells you something about them. people that are struggling, then you also know, you can adapt your training to how they learn. But more than anything else, they get some successes along the way that they feel more engaged because they are achieving something. Okay, I've mastered the accounts payable, and they actually get certificates from us. They have titles as they go through the various training stages to keep them more engaged. And we have found that is much more successful than just throwing them in and saying, okay, here, do this today.
Very cool. And do you have this training available for other firms as well as
yes,
testing?
We do. Yes, we do.
Okay.
One thing I'd like to jump in on, it really tweaked what Juliet said in terms of being very upfront with our team members that technology is not going to fix their problem. They still have to understand the process, that technology is going to augment it, that we can't just slap technology or automation onto something and say that we found the silver bullet. And I think if that's really clear, when you're clear with your team members on that stuff, that is really the right thing to set with them out the gate, so that they understand that they actually have to understand the whole process. And we're going to give you tools to make you faster at that and to be able to serve more clients, which is great. But if they don't understand that and they're just expecting the technology to fix the problem, there's an over reliance, and you have to clean up so many messes when that starts happening and it becomes systemic throughout your practice. Like that is I think, Juliet, that's probably the most key point I think in there for people to take away in terms of how they approach training their team members and the messaging that they should be giving.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the technology is there to augment and support our work, but not to completely 100% replace it, right? So we still have to trust that the numbers are correct and do our checks and balances and make sure everything's copacetic there. I guess just one thing to add from what we do at Ontraflow from an onboarding perspective, we do a lot of buddy shadowing. So we, and it's, not necessarily one particular person, but we might know that, one person is really fabulous and has lots of experience with one application. So then that person will sit with them for, just shadowing. And it's a really great way for them to learn. And then they can bounce back and forth, taking turns, leading a sharing session and actually do it. So they're not just sitting there looking at their screen, trying to do something for the first time. But and having that building that relationship with that person in the team, so that if they have questions in the future, they know who to go to. And the same with all the other applications as well. So, someone might be an expert in our AP application, someone might be an expert in our payroll application. This way they can kind of bounce around, get to know the team, build relationships, especially right now when we're fully remote right now. We're semi-remote previously. So it's a little bit more challenging for people joining a team when you're not actually like meeting your buddies. So this way they can connect with a bunch of people in the team as they go. Okay, great. So I'm going to ask a two-part question for the next one, just in the interest of time. So this should be fun. Okay, so you can share either, or if you've got two quick ones, both. What's something that you tried in hiring and onboarding that completely flopped? Didn't work, and or something that you've always really wanted to try and you haven't had a chance to do that yet. And then for those of you who are watching today as well, please share your flops. Those are always great learning, and they're fun to read. No one will shame you, I promise. But also, it's great to learn from each other, and it's also something that if you want to, something that you want to try. But I would think I'll pass this over to Shane. Why don't you start us off? So something that you tried that flopped, or something you've always wanted to try.
Yeah, I'll give you two quick ones. I guess the one in terms of what is actually flopped with us when we were bringing people on, especially when we were starting out our practice, we started to try to do sessions that were just too large in terms of learning and development for team members, and we were trying to pull a lot of people together, and really it flopped because people were checked out, they weren't engaged in the session, we weren't asking questions, we didn't have engagement because the room was just too big, especially when you're doing a lot of that stuff virtually. That was probably a big thing that flopped for us, because we essentially just saw a stall, and until we went back to probably our roots on having just smaller rooms and smaller groups, we actually got a lot more group learning and sharing out of that stuff in terms of training and onboarding our team members when the room got too big. In terms of something that I would love to try to do that we haven't yet, really around onboarding, I would love to take a client's story of what things look like in terms of records that we're receiving, and take like a full year client journey and say, this is where they're started, and as they grow, can we actually add pieces of their business into it, so that much like Juliet does, where they say, hey, over that first 90 days, you're starting to work through and add different modules in for that stuff. can we do that with that dummy client first and actually build the whole client story? Because that's what we see a lot in the side, where you deal with somebody who's really small and they're adding pieces to their business, and can we just scale up with them with our team members, and can we show that to a team member? I would love to try doing that and building out what that full thing looks like with the right applications and all that stuff. It's a big task, but I think that would be awesome. We haven't tried that yet, but man, that would give somebody a real journey in terms of what we're trying to accomplish with our clients over the life of them being with the firm.
Yeah, for sure. Great. Who would like to go next?
I can.
Oh, go ahead, Juliet. Go ahead.
Okay, so mine for a flop, I'll share a flop because I, like you said, Helena, I think everybody learns from what doesn't work.
Yeah.
Our worst hire, and I'm going to say worst hire, although that's probably not politically correct, started with us on a Monday morning. Our office opened at 8:30. She went for lunch at noon and never came back. So that's our worst hire. So that's my biggest flop. And I'm going to say that the learning that we came out of it was many, many years ago, before we knew all the things that we know now. But what we did was we brought her in and we sat her down and had her watch some videos and to learn some stuff so that she could hit the ground running. And what we learned from that is she was so overwhelmed that she left. And I guess the worst part of the story was she took us to the Employment Standards Board to get paid for the 4 hours that she was in our office. But what we learned was that you need to engage them with the team and lay out a roadmap of what their journey is going to look like. Again, we do it for 90 days, but laying out a roadmap for them. Here's what it's going to look like. Make their first day fun, as opposed to just trying to get them to hit the ground running as quickly as possible.
Anything that you've always wanted to try, but you haven't done yet?
Oh, there's so many. That's not a quick answer for me. There would be so many.
brain date. Okay, Martha.
All right. I'm going to address the flop part and also answer one of the questions that came through at the same time. Back in 2017, when Grant Thornton was starting out on its cloud accounting journey, of course, we did not have processes in place because we didn't know what the heck we were doing, and what we were supposed to be doing, or how the softwares were intended to be working and interacting with one another. And it was onboarding a lot of different staff members without having consistent processes in place. And so what ends up happening is you have to unravel some things that have been done in the past to make sure that you are consistent across the whole firm or across the practice that you're in. And so if you are a bookkeeping or small accounting firm, the processes are so important, and it's almost like they have to come first before you get to the hiring piece. And I know that that's probably hard because you want to hire someone right away because you're so busy. But taking that time to document the processes is super, super important. I would say the other flop, I guess, that I've learned from and rectified since is we have an internal client services team. And so that's our cloud support team. And they're a fantastic group that really support our colleagues and help to manage user access and manage all the different components on the back end for our cloud team across the country. But one of the things was they didn't know what our teams were doing and why we were doing it. And so we've taken the time over the past few months to actually educate our internal client services team on the cloud side to understand what the service looks like for clients. What are the applications that we're using and why do we use them? And teaching them about the service that we're offering. And we've seen that part of doing that has really opened their eyes to maybe why people have certain requests or certain escalations, and it's just created a much more holistic team because they have both sides of what they're doing as well as what our external client services colleagues are doing. In terms of what would I like to try, There's so many things, like Juliet said, there's so many things that I want to try. There's so many unique components within cloud that I really want to try. But I would say the first one that I would really like to do is to set up a soft skills training program for our team members in how to have conversations with a client about our observations, and build a training program around analytics and how to deliver information and how to listen to clients as well, about what is happening with their business, what are the pain points that are keeping them up at night, or anything, because our clients really rely on us to help figure out maybe the next steps for them or make sense of their finances. And part of that is, of course, delivering what the numbers tell us, but also listening to our clients and listening to what those needs are, not just the first time you talk to them, but on an ongoing basis.
That's really great. I have a similar desire to build something out like that too. So maybe we should get together and collaborate on that. But it's true because, generally speaking, when you're hiring people who are accounting professionals, right? They're good at accounting, but they're not necessarily good at business. But in the space that we're in cloud accounting space, doing advisory and what have you, you need to have really good business understanding too, which means you need to understand what are some of the challenges that businesses are going to commonly go through different phases of growth. And they're moving a lot faster than larger organizations. So, there's indicators there that if you're experienced in this, okay, you're going to run into some cash flow problems here in about, 3-6 months or what have you. But for people who are newer to this world, they just don't have that understanding. They may have worked in public practice the whole time and not had any industry experience and actually worked in organizations and kind of gone through some of those issues, or they haven't worked with enough clients to kind of see some commonalities. So, having some kind of training to help with their business skills, I think it was something I've always wanted to do, while also being able to leverage that for our clients too, because it's also really good, financial literacy training for them too, along the way. So it's maybe a summer project. Okay, we're going to get to the Q&A because there's a lot of questions coming in. If you haven't posed your burning questions, please share them, and also feel free to reach out to us afterwards as well. We're always happy to nerd it out on this topic. We're all very near and dear to us. Okay, so and I think we'll just try to maybe rapid fire on the answers here because we've got a lot here. A really interesting one I want to start off with. Any opinions on outsourcing hiring to a company versus hiring locally? If you run a virtual firm, what are your opinions on outsourcing?
I can start.
Sure.
If you'd asked me 3 years ago, I would have said never would I ever. My opinion has changed, but like Martha said, your systems and your processes have to be rock solid before you ever introduce any kind of outsourcing contracting to maintain quality of work. I think that would be the biggest piece.
Cool. Anybody want to add?
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that when you look at your business, it's no different than any other business. There is no one size fits all answer for what this is. So you do have to look at stuff within your market. I mean, if you can't find talent, the stuff Juliet talked about is the things you need to do to be able to access that. It's really going to be very dependent on what situation that you're in. And if you can't find people, do you have another choice? Really, but to go down that path, if you can find people, does it actually fit within your business model? And I think that's a very personal question to each person for what that looks like. Like if I was going to hire people to do work for our office in Toronto, I'm not going to go hire somebody in the middle of downtown Toronto to do bookkeeping work. I'm either going to outsource it or find some other talent across the firm that fits well with our business model for what you can actually charge for this. And I think that's probably the premise where you start. What's the right decision for your business? And if it's an either or at that point, then you're probably going back to your fundamental values of your business of what decision you make. But it's hard to do a one size fits all. And I've learned from experience, saying never is a tough thing to do, because at some point you do have to swallow the pill and say, I don't really have a choice anymore, or this is the best decision for my business and I need to go and do that.
For sure. Yeah, you're totally right. Totally agree. Your business model is really important. It's not going to make your problems go away. You're going to have different problems essentially. So it's just whether it's like the lesser of the two evils, what problems do you want to deal with? And it's probably worth speaking to people that have gone through that process before and getting some of the best practices from them, some of the challenges, and then you can ascertain if those are the types of challenges you want to bring into your firm. You know, it might, as a first step, be worthwhile to hire a contractor, a local contractor first, and see how that process goes, working with somebody who's not an employee, as a first step before you go all feet in. But it's really up to you to decide, you know, is it going to work for your business, and do you have the time and effort to actually manage the outsourcing? Because it's not all work gone away and super easy as you'd want it to be. Okay, really quick one. What sites for high traffic are good for recruiting accountants and bookkeepers? I can start with this one. We usually use LinkedIn and Indeed, and it has been, so Ontraflow is a recruitment agency as well. This last year has been absolutely crazy on the recruitment front. So if you're having a hard time finding people, you are not alone. Across all industries, it has been really challenging. And what we're finding is you have to be, your job ad has to just draw people in 100%. You just can't get away with throwing your job description up there anymore. You need to really engage people so that people are reading it going, yes, that's me, I want that job. You know, you need to be very careful about all the steps that you're going through, and professional interviewers seem to be absolutely everywhere. And you're probably gonna have to pay for more posting budget than you probably want to, because it is so competitive right now. So all the key people have been paid more money to stick around in their companies. There's a lot of people who were let go and decided to chill out for a whole year, and they've kind of got off of their whole cycle of actually getting up and working all day long. And everyone's asking for more money than ever before. So it's from a business perspective, I feel like it's a triple whammy of difficulty right now. That's my personal woes. Who else wants to share?
I just have the same as you, Indeed and LinkedIn, and you know, those direct reach outs and places like this, coming to QB Connect and actually connecting with people outside of these breakout sessions, I think is super important to finding and recruiting some great accountants and bookkeepers. For sure.
Yeah. Agreed. Indeed, LinkedIn, Facebook groups that are for our industry. We run a Facebook group, and we actually have a post. It's a pinned post that is, are you looking or are you available? And we've been able to match up some people, you know, who are looking for jobs. Because as you said, Helena, there's a lot of competition out there. And even as an employer, there's a lot to weed through. So sometimes looking in places of where you would hang out as a professional, you may come across other people in the industry who are also looking.
Yeah, great minds must think alike. I have nothing to add, so that's good. But yeah, same thing. Indeed, LinkedIn are the two primaries and stuff like that. Personal reach outs, like it's. I mean, everybody is getting driven to those places. Like, it's a super competitive market right now for that stuff, and that's the biggest thing to realize when you're in those spaces.
Very cool. This next question is really interesting. I'm excited to hear what people have to say. So I'm a sole practitioner and overwhelmed with clients. Nobody's ever been there before. How do I recruit a partner? Where do I advertise and find someone who is experienced in public practice and willing to take the risk of not having a steady paycheck? Because, you know, it's obviously a lot to go through that transition. So I know Juliet and I both have partners. They happen to be our significant others. So, I mean, that could be one route, but joking. You know, I have had this question before. I'm curious to hear what some recommendations might be from the team here. So anyone would like to start?
I would love to start with this one. First, I would ask myself whether or not it's a partner that I need for the business, because if it is an overwhelmed with clients piece, you know, I would actually be looking to a manager level person to come in and start to handle some of those client relationships that, you know, maybe aren't as key to your business anymore, or just pieces that you can help shuffle down so that you're focused on the right clients and the right activities. It's really hard to find someone who can be there as a partner for you, because that trust level has to be super high right from the start, because you're essentially buying into the business together. And that's a really hard position to put yourself in if it's not going to be your spouse or someone you already inherently trust. That being said, groups like Juliet mentioned on Facebook, there's a lot of sole practitioners on those websites who are asking for tips and tricks, looking for help. And it might be a great place to connect with them. I know there's QBHQ on there. There's the Workflow Watering Hole. I'm sure I could mention a whole bunch of Facebook groups, but that would be a place that I would look to if it's truly a partner that you're looking for. On the steady paycheck front, I think there's also this piece where people are looking for contract or piecemeal work as well. So if it isn't a partner that you're looking for, and maybe it's a manager level person that you're looking for, maybe you could actually contract out certain hours a month for those individuals and figure out a way to make a part-time arrangement happen so that in the interim, you're not locked into paying someone full-time for that period. So that would be my suggestion to look into.
Those are all fabulous. Anybody else want to add anything?
I would say if you're looking for a partner and you're overwhelmed with clients, if your partner is going to do the exact same thing that you do, you will both be overwhelmed with clients. You probably just created a bigger mess for yourself in terms of what that looks like. And if you're talking to somebody who doesn't understand what it is to be a partner and a business owner, like that has to be very clear and upfront. It is harder to get out of a business relationship than it is to get out of an employment relationship with someone for what that looks like. So you really have to take time to make sure there's culture and fit. If you can find somebody, if you are overwhelmed with clients because you are really good at selling, and you can find a partner who is going to complement your skills because they are really good at operational efficiency and managing a team, then you need to start looking for that. But again, that's why there are conferences such as this. That is why know who your competition are. Are they local? What kind of firm do you have? Who is operating similarly to you? That you're looking for somebody at this point that it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It has to be 1 + 1 has to equal more than 2 for this to be successful for what you're looking for. So when you go down that path, you can find another sole practitioner. The other piece is that you might be professional services firms are currently looking to do more work in this space. Don't be afraid to talk to different size firms that maybe have never been able to do accounting like this before and actually do cloud accounting. Maybe there's a fit there because now you can bring different service levels to your clients that maybe you otherwise couldn't before because it's all resting on you. So I would say, don't just look for another sole practitioner. You just find the right fit. There are different sizes of firms that may fit with you in terms of your culture and values. And if you bring in a partner who doesn't fit with that, your team members probably aren't going to be happy with you. And now we're back to this whole problem of trying to recruit people to replace the people that maybe just walked out the door.
Yeah, all great points. It might be a partnership thing that you can do as well. Find another firm that's doing something similar and partner with them in some way, shape, or form. Okay. One last quick question that was raised that I just wanted to address was just, do we pay candidates for the hiring process if we were asking them to do a bunch of testing and go through rigmarole? I haven't. Just quickly, anybody do that? Nose all around?
No, it's table stakes. Or you do the testing if you want the job. That's the way we'd approach it.
That's the way you do it. Okay, so this is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much to Juliet, to Martha, to Shane for joining me here today. Thank you to QuickBooks for hosting this fabulous event. I'm so excited that we were able to all get together and learn from each other. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. For the participants, thank you for asking questions along the way. And like I said, feel free to reach out if there's any other burning questions we didn't get to. There was a whole bunch there, so thank you. And I was going to say that that's all we have time for today. Thank you for your questions, and please provide your feedback about the session on the survey link that's provided. It's really helpful for us as presenters to learn and to grow ourselves. And for sure, enjoy the rest of the show, and we'll see you at the Arkells later tonight. I'm so excited for that. So have a lovely rest of your day. Meet people, learn from each other, ask hard questions, get as much value out of today as you can, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.